I am NetMoverSitan. And next is something that it's going to be good. Yeah, it will be. It is now time for R Corp. Now, we've seen L Corp, a wing of the world that had fallen, that generated power from eldritch monstrosities made from physically manifesting the mind. We've seen W Corp, which provided fast transportation regardless of distance, which really torments the economy class passengers for millennia. And then loads the save state to make it as if it never happened. Then we have T Corp, which made W Corp's transport method as timeless as they needed it to be. R Corp, now they're soldiers of fortune, who are sent to provide death and destruction for those able to afford their services, in a variety of ways. We're only familiar with the Rabbit Team, those with the few S-class firearms available. The head likely has no problem with this because they have no interest in taking over. That, and they can be hired by the head as well, as why use violence against them when it's much easier to just buy them off? Only the most powerful of abnormalities could withstand this. There's also the Rhino Team, which can be physically devastating, and the Reindeer Team. They fry brains faster than a strong strain of weed in the system of a hippie. It's also implied that they all get their minds wiped of all memories of their mission. Let's go over the major players of the fourth pack, which will be the main focus of this wing. Let's start with someone familiar. Mio, the captain of the Rabbit Team of the fourth pack. Hail the rabbit! She also has some, well, at least some leanings towards Olga, considering how she recruited her and her office by going out for drinks with her. Armed with her combat knife and automatic rifle, she and her team brought painful death to all that they were sent to destroy. She even destroyed her enemies while enjoying fighting a little too much. As for her origins, based on what is known, she was saved once by her hero, who was Kali, the Red Mist. Since that day, she trained herself, aiming to be like her. Well, she's certainly like her in terms of her work ethic. She then went to a recruiting town and met the standards of R Corp. To be a hero herself and save lives, along with the possibility of meeting Kali again, to show her what she had become. She had fought in many battles in different parts of the city. It took a while to catch up to the Red Mist, but not in the way that she fought. They met when she was Gebura, which was basically Kali's brain in a robot's body. Mio was likely to see Gibberer as she truly was, unlike Ian when he was the manager, as his vision was manipulated due to the perception filter. At that point, she felt embarrassed. She believed that she saved everyone, but considering herself a hero, well, that implies a black and white morality. While that city has a more morally blurry morality, where the line between a hero and a villain is much harder to define. Well, she's more an anti-hero based on that logic. Next we have Maxim. He is the captain of the Rhino team of the 4th pack. He's armed with a hammer that wouldn't look out of place in the hands of a pink berserker with an explosive temper. He also wears a suit of power armor that makes him look like a Spider-Man villain. Yeah, that's what I think of when I look at that. I'm surprised that the Rabbit team doesn't have hammers. They could use them to pound their enemies into red mochi. Well, it would make sense, due to cultural reasons. Anyway, they're capable of causing a lot more physical destruction, with a lack of any subtlety or restraint, both in combat style and personality. Maxim understands that rich people visit them and offer benefits for helping them, even though war worried them more than the destruction that they'd inevitably cause. As for why a war was to occur, that was what Nikolai, the leader of their pack, wanted to know. The typical mindset was that it wasn't any big deal, as ambition and obsession meet together, which makes dreams reality. Then again, one individual's dreams is another individual's nightmare. Then we have Rudolph, the captain of the reindeer team of the 4th pack. He's armed with a staff that can unleash a mind-frying discharge that can overload the minds of others, driving them insane, and potentially killing them, while leaving physical structures largely intact. Well, certainly compared to the Rabbit team, and even more so compared with the Rhino team. Although there is still collateral damage. And there's also the danger of feedback, causing as much damage to him as it does to the target or targets, which has resulted in him being not entirely seen. Those antlers concentrate the electricity which they use to attack with, which has something to do with that not being completely sane. As if there's too much of that, well, there's a reason why one of his antlers are broken. He understands that R Corp is a private military company, where they don't run out of troops, no matter how many of their own dies. Other wings want to know what singularity they have that makes this possible. Soldiers that have strong combat prowess, don't fear death, and don't hesitate. They're sent to the outskirts to explore it, along with performing other dangerous operations. Some theorize that their singularity is cloning, Others think that they're making robots. Both risk the head coming for them, one more so than the other. Well, considering that robots that can pass for human are illegal, that's certainly a risk of the head coming for them, but thankfully that doesn't appear to be the case. As for cloning, that has a different problem, which will be covered later. Both were laughed off, but he recognized that they weren't off by much. With one of them, he just didn't reveal that at this point. Now we move on to Nikolai. She's the leader of the fourth pack. She keeps the captains in line. She's also armed with a serrated sword, so that she can certainly hold her own in battle, although she's more into supporting those under her. She understood that a large-scale war was occurring. Their participation was something that was greatly motivating to them, as this was to avoid them being destroyed. Yeah, it wasn't a suggestion or a plea. It was simply, do this or we shall act like a poacher and start killing some animals. Those that hired them were confident, full of conviction. This was when thick smoke covered a nest, long before the distortion came about, most likely. Mio refers to her as Granny. Finally, let's talk about the teams themselves. The Rabbit team are known for having a short attention span and being quite raving. Raving mad, that is. Okay, maybe not that bad. But they do have bloodlust. They're built for speed and consider themselves clean compared to the others, even though they don't seem to discriminate within their areas of operation. They'll kill any that aren't the Rabbit team. Yeah, they strike first and ask questions later, if they can be bothered to do so. The Rhino team are known for their aggression and being straight to the point with their actions. They're built for physical strength. They're basically like charging demolition vehicles. They can take the beating and dish it out, making the others lesser targets, although moving too much can cause the body to heat up. This was due to R Corp tech, which likely involved expanding artificial muscles within the power armor and adrenaline injectors, which is injected into their systems. Something that others use, but not to that extent. Likely. They're prone to getting too excited and rampaging uncontrollably. It's difficult for them to calm down after that. The Reindeer team are known for attacking the minds of those that are their targets, using electricity in a way that uses powerful electric waves generated from brainwaves. Of course, there is some friendly fire during this, as their method of attack can harm their allies as well as themselves, the latter due to feedback, which can drive them insane, especially if the battle drags out or too much power is used in a short time. They sometimes use K Corp nanotech to help prevent or at least mitigate the damage, but it's only use when needed, as it's quite expensive. Yeah, I know. It's why She Association didn't use it to patch themselves up. Well, they would have mentioned that if they did. We pick up the story at the 4th Pack conference room within R Corp, where we see Mio, Maxim, and Rudolph, the captains of the Rabbit, Rhino, and Reindeer teams, respectively. They were discussing something. Mio asked what Rudolph did with her rabbits that he borrowed, complaining that he didn't bring any results with them. Rudolph replied back that results couldn't be gotten with those faulty troopers. This her off, saying, "What the did you say, you one-horned reindeer?" Rudolph insulted her weak rabbits as a response to that, seeing them as too feeble to get anything done. Maxim was more or less screaming, "Fight, fight, fight, fight!" betting on the bunny, telling her to snap his other antler like a twig. Thankfully, Nikolai, captain of the 4th Pack, stopped them tearing at each other and told them to shut up and sit down before she kicks all of their. She clearly has enough augmentations to take down even Maxim. Mio wanted to know what was up. Nikolai told them that they were going to be dispatched to both R Corp's nest and the library. Mio was confused by the whole nest job, even though she understood the library. Rudolph noted that the fun wasn't doing so good after Callow disappeared, so it'd be no problem for them. What about the index? Well, according to Nikolai, they're still causing trouble. Strangely, they weren't able to mobilize many troops. Well, R Corp, I meant. Although a few are going there as reinforcements. Likely for any fixer officers that still remain there, along with the new association. If that association is still there. As for R Corp, or more specifically, the captains of the Rabbit team, the Reindeer team and the Rhino team, along with Nikolai, they're all going into the library along with a few from each team. Failure will result in the 4th Pack being culled, including Nikolai. That's around 15,000 of them, hinting at each consisting of roughly 5,000. Yeah, this was enough to worry all of them. Rudolph asked if the higher-ups bailed them out, considering the circumstances. What circumstances? Well, regardless, Maxim understood that they were chosen as the 4th Pack were organized exclusively for R Corp's nest. So it's a miracle that they lasted that long. Rudolph complained that they worked hard to do what they fought for, but now their necks are on the chopping block. Yeah, Mio. You always have to eat, and if you don't do this, as a certain 1990s video game tough guy would put it, you'll die. She noted that R Corp practically self-destructed, not seeing why they have to involve themselves in this. Nikolai told them that it was all about trust. If it was due to its own actions that it collapsed, who gives a? However, if R Corp collapsed due to some external force that wasn't the head, then R Corp would be blamed for failing to protect against that external force, which would violate the contract. Rudolph understood that the livestock that didn't do their job right would be terminated. And by terminated, I mean in a worse way than being fired. Nikolai went on to say that it concerned more than R Corp. Mio wanted to know why. Nikolai told them that the library had knowledge of W Corp's singularity, as in the books of the warp cleanup crew and the first-class passengers. That's when Nikolai asked about how Mio handled that one. Oh yes, by hiring Olga in the Mola office after she had a few drinks with her, who then used the invitation recklessly after waiting several hours. Yeah, several hours on the warp train in order to escape. So Mio knew how the warp trains worked, and yet she had the Mola office use them? As for the reason why she had the Mola office use the warp trains, it was because Mio had another job to take care of, and she wanted Olga to do something else, to take care of that in another location. That was when the library was an urban legend, so it wasn't as bad as before. The Mola office was able to handle urban legends. Maxim asked why economy class, not first class. Maxim, how dense can you be? Paying for free economy class tickets is expensive enough as it is, never mind free first class tickets. Mio made that much clear. Well, it's a good thing that they didn't have first-class tickets, even if Mio could afford them, as they'd be among those that were turned into puppets by Jae-hyun, the puppeteer. Maxim was able to figure out that Olga and her office were turned into books in the library. He also understands that W Corp can cover up passengers disappearing in economy class. Mio knew that the train stopping for that long won't be believed, questioning why cleanup agents were sent that quickly, as that could backfire and expose its true singularity to all. Well, it's close to that, as the books are there. They just haven't got them yet, as there are some that will want to look into the disappearances, especially with the first-class passengers gone. Nikolai focused them on more important matters. They're to protect the singularities and nests of R Corp, W Corp, and T Corp. They have two options: retrieve the books related to them, or they're all dead. They also need to find out why R Corp collapsed, and she threatened them with the Ravens being sent to dispose of them directly. The Ravens. I suspect that they're an avian-themed internal affairs branch of R Corp. They're sent to deal with any within R Corp that go rogue or violate certain conditions, and is likely to be designed to be an anti-R Corp operative. What they're capable of is unclear, but that seems to be the general implication, that they're a failsafe. Well, Maxim hoped that L Corp did slit its own throat. Mio couldn't see how everyone acted like the singularities were a matter of life and death. Well, right now, they are for the fourth pack. As Rudolph pointed out, they have to secure them, regardless of the cause. Mio thought it was funny with the deal regarding the singularities, the time-saving teleportation of W Corp, which she knew was quite literal. She knew that the passengers were taken on a ride through another dimension for at least 1,000 years, going through a time tunnel, then restored to their start of the journey state at the end. Then T Corp repackages the time collected by the trains for sale or use. This time was saved up by that box that stops people dying while the journey is happening. She was talking about how passengers were living their lives out there in the city, not knowing of the thousands of years of hellish torment, which was what made that meat stew that they were eating, which Roland mentioned earlier uses a pot that accelerates the time it takes to make it. She sees R Corp as no different, but just as she was about to speak of what their singularity was, Nikolai cut her off and threatened to put her in solitary if she kept going on about singularities. She then ordered them to mobilize. This made Roland, who was watching this, almost his pants, as R Corp was coming, and they have a reputation. Angela was curious how the library, in its current state, would fare against R Corp. Roland basically said, "How would you know? You've never done field work personally." Well, as Angela put it, that's your job, Roland. She trusts him to handle it nicely, as he always has, regardless of him complaining about that. She's only seen the Rabbit team in action during the events of Lobotomy Corporation, so she can't give much in the way of advice. Roland didn't hold that against her, as she didn't teach him how to fight, which she apologized for. Roland was clearly joking about that, which Angela didn't get. He asked why L Corp hired R Corp. At first he believed why, due to knowing nothing, but after seeing Gebura and the others, R Corp seemed redundant. Angela explained that they were for in case things really went out of control. Yeah, the Rabbit team were damage control. The Rhinos were too easily agitated, which would result in collateral damage and would have destroyed the facility, as it was underground at the time. The Reindeers would have left the machines intact, but they would have killed the manager, who was Ayan, which would have restarted the Seed of Light scenario. Roland understood that the Rabbit team was the only team suitable for the facility. Angela confirmed this, even though they would attack employees foolish enough to walk into the area of operation, which would trap them inside and get them killed. They were helpful overall. if utilized properly. Upon arrival within the library, Rudolph noted that the air was heavy. Maxim compared it to the ruins, a place described as magical by Roland. At least I think it was him. Well, whoever it was, that's how it was described. And it was hinted at being dangerous. As the star of the city is not much different in terms of danger. Mio asked them if they were excited to graze some fresh grass. Yeah, Mio, we know that you had some psychotic tendencies. Nikolai told her to shut the up, questioning if she can shut up for 5 minutes. Yeah, that's a stretch. Then Angela appeared to greet them. Nikolai greeted her back. Mio spoke to her in a more casual tone. The formality dropped as their contract was over. Angela found it good to see a familiar face. Mio asked if she was the one that broke R Corp. Angela asked her why she thought that. Mio believed that her rotten mind would do that at some point from the first meeting with her. And thanks to her, they're going to get destroyed. This rambling nonsense, stupid as it was annoying to Angela, suggesting that she read a book to find out if she can get it. She then explained to Mio what a book was, as if she was a complete idiot. A bundle of pages made from paper that she can hold in her hands and read. Yeah, she's taking the In return, Mio mocked her by asking her if she's playing grown-up in her little library after she's done being a puppet secretary. Ooh, that's disgusting. Angela responded by asking if she's offended that she might have killed the Red Mist, the woman that she's a fangirl of. And then Nikolai struck Mio, due to her previously telling Mio to shut up. She's also intrigued by what Angela said. Then Nikolai asked Angela to lead them inside. Angela ushered them in, and then all the rabbits, rhinos, reindeers, and Nikolai were killed. And some devastating techniques and key pages were acquired. These were more charge-based key pages and combat pages, as some of them needed a minimum amount of charge to be truly effective, while some provided that charge. After that reception, Roland asked how it felt to be looking at the book of her old friend. Angela saw her as an acquaintance at most. She was one of the few that had met her for a while. Well, much longer than Roland, anyway. A former associate, which is quite rare among the guests that have been fought so far. Roland asked if that felt odd. All it left was a curious impression. Angela wasn't planning to go easy on her regardless. The purpose was clear, both for librarians and the guests. Roland then asked if she thought that gaining freedom by devouring everything would leave a bitter taste in her mouth. Now, why would you ask about that? You should be used to death. Angela didn't know, but the goal was all that mattered to her, not what was around her. Seeing the steps she took as hard enough, she didn't want any regret holding her back. She noticed that he didn't get tired of asking if she had any regrets. While it was annoying to her, it didn't seem to arouse suspicion, even though it should. Roland noted that she was ignorant at first, but she's seen and experienced certainly enough to possibly change her thoughts a little. Aims and wishes change depending on a number of factors. She didn't know about that. Well, anyone notice that? What Roland asked. Well, it's likely to become more noticeable later. Next we have the Big Bird. This is one of the 3 birds that came out of what could be considered a dimensional tear within the Black Forest. It was given a prophecy that made it and the other birds fearful of a monster. Each of them dealt with it in a different way. The Big Bird didn't just receive the eyes of the tall bird. It also removed all of its feathers and turned them into an everlasting lantern, so that even night wouldn't hide this monster. The Big Bird would have an interesting way to save all those within the forest from being killed. By doing to them what Ozzy Osbourne once did to a bat. It bit their heads off. The reason for this? It didn't understand what death was. It also used its eyes to mesmerize someone in order to save them. In the facility, if it breached, it would black out the corridor that it was in, draw in one of the agents towards it, if they stayed around too long, and then kill them. But they could avoid that if they left the corridor. In the library, on the other hand, it had eyeball chicks backing it up. The eyeball chicks provide a lullaby upon being defeated, which can make the Big Bird sleep, rendering it vulnerable. Otherwise, there's a chance of the Big Bird eating one of the librarians. Normally, it believes that there's no worry as long as it's there. That's debatable. As it patrols the forest, it seeks to brighten the road ahead, to see the lives it must save. It sought out children that needed its help. Okay, we know how bad that is, believing that it's the safety of all creatures in the forest, when we know what happens. When it enchants a librarian, it sees if that it kills them first, so that the big scary monster, the beast, won't. How little it knows. It wanted others to come to it, to protect them, to protect children in peril. It was, of course, silent when asleep. The assistant librarian saw it as the most dangerous beast in the forest, that they had to make that bird sleep before they could work on it. They regretted that Bainar wasn't able to save them the trouble of defeating it, or even help them. It's because this opponent is likely considered beneath her. Upon defeating it, while they appreciate that the bird would want to save them from that beast, they saw themselves as better off without it, asking if it was over, along with feeling relieved that they could handle it. The Big Bird stage resembles the Black Forest, within a clearing with dark bushes and several bare trees in the background. After her, assistant librarians took down the Big Bird Without her help, Bainar sat down for some tea. Then Roland entered her floor and delivered some philosophy books. Bainar noticed that Roland had many questions based on his expression. Questions that he wants answers for. She offered him a cup of tea before he started asking the questions. This was something that Roland was clearly not used to. Yeah, having tea with someone that has single-handedly destroyed wings that overreach themselves. In fact, she destroyed one before her final mission to shut down that outskirts lab. Bainar believed that he'd grow accustomed to it, like many things. She then asked what the library was from what he's seen. This was mildly annoying to Roland, as he's already answered this, asking if she's lost it more than she already has. She asked this again as viewpoints can change over time. So he humoured the reformed sadist by admitting that he was putting it fancily with Ruina or jail. So this time he answered plainly that the library fits into the city perfectly, where people die all the time. This answer satisfied Bainar. Roland didn't think the black tea tasted too bad, although he had a preference for coffee. Bainar told him that it was due to the palpable agony of the tea leaf infused in each cup. Roland still found it hard to believe that she was an arbiter of the head. Bainar confirmed that she was. He had some things to ask an arbiter if he ever ran into one, and lived to speak of it. Bainar asked if he had faith that she'd answer these questions. Roland had no faith at all. She had a question where, if she really was an arbiter, why stay there doing nothing? She said that she simply watched from afar. She was no longer an arbiter. Roland asked, she was just watching? That she was being pretty complacent about helping Angela for being a bystander. Bainar simply she takes care of what's given to her. Then Roland asked what if Angela ordered her to tell all the secrets of the city that only an arbiter of the head would know. Bainar basically told him that she couldn't do that, extract the secrets out of her, even if she wanted to. In fact, for all they knew, Angela probably already tried that without them knowing about it. Roland then asked what would happen if he tried to kill her and turn her into a book to pull out every bit of info. Bainar considered him bold and quite hostile. Well, it would have been bold, if suicidal, if Bainar was at full strength. Apparently this is what differed him from the other patron librarians, other than him being human. Well, Roland is all out of courtesy towards one of the shady overlords of the city. Bainar went on to tell him that there was once a man whose dream had been ruined by her. Well, she assisted someone in doing so. This person was, of course, Ian. When he faced her in person, before Kali fought her to the death, His anger wasn't directed at her. It was directed at what was above and beyond. His gaze was farther than what was right in front of him. Roland and Angela were the opposites. They could see nothing beyond their immediate field of vision. This annoyed Roland, and she mocks him slightly by calling him quite sharp. She sees a poison in him, heavy, slow, and deadly. She's able to figure him out, even if he isn't able to with her. He has nothing to worry about with her, as she can simply watch and remain silent. Which sets the theme of parallel conversation. Bainar then said, "O sorrow, I have ended. You see, by respecting you, because I am certain you will never leave me." Roland then said the next line, "Ah, I realize it. Your beauty lies in the force of your being." This was From Prayer to Loving Sorrow by Francis Jums. Was it Francis Jums or Francois Jums? Well, however you pronounce that. He'd lost all patience and stood up. Bainar was a little shocked about him leaving. He's welcome to stay a little longer and finish his cup of tea. Roland told her that he lost his appetite. She invited him to drop by and be her company. She considered it rather amusing to talk with him. Roland was not so convinced. Abnormalities will be the primary focus for at least the next lore video. But I promise you, after the abnormalities are done, it'll be something stronger. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!